B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We are back here on our Tuesday night program for the IGGERET HAGRA. We are nearing the end of this extraordinary letter that the Gaon Mivilna wrote to us a few hundred years ago. Tonight's Shiur will be for a refuah shlema, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Rabbi Fraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Avi Mori David ben Esriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Jora, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha bat Julie, Ayla bat Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Cephas ben Marsha, Alexander ben Marsha, Louis ben Marsha, and all of Klal Yisrael and all the righteous Noahides, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every single one of them that are watching our shiurim, that are sharing them, that are applying them to their lives to the best that they can, especially now that we are before Matan Torah, we are before Shavuot, we're only a few days away from the extraordinary day of Kedusha, the Shavuot, the time where each and every single one of us is, in essence, receiving the Torah all over again. Not only is it the Yomtov, where you're supposed to celebrate with your family, have a festive meal, customary to learn all night, but the key is to understand why we're doing all of this. I mean, technically, we've been preparing for Shavuot for over a month, almost nearly 2 months. You have counting the Omer day after day, and by the time you get to the 50th day, you have Shavuot, and in essence, we got the Torah the second day of Shavuot. In the exile, we have 2 days Yom Tov, unlike Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKodesh, that only has 1 day Yom Tov. So in essence, we got the Torah the next day, and the reason why we celebrate Shavuot on that 50th day rather than the second day is simply because the Chachamim explain in the name of the Maharsha and others that the preparation for Matan Torah is even greater than Matan Torah. The preparation for receiving the Torah is even greater than the actual receiving of the Torah itself. Now, how does this apply to us today? How do we prepare each and every single day? Well, in so many words, anyone that watches the Shiurim by our own very dear Rabbi Fraim, who learned this over 20 years ago, that he learned this from his Rebbe, Rav Baruch Salomon, and Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha, an Ish Kodesh, an extraordinary Talmid Chacham, and was sacrificed his life for the sake of Am Yisrael, especially for the mitzvah of Shabbat, where he would protest each and every Shabbat to make sure that people don't drive on Shabbat, the people that are not violating Shabbat, and they even arrested him. They even arrested Rav Baruch Salomon on Shabbat, and of course the kedusha that he had in him was not something that was unheard of. All of the Gedolei Ador came to visit him in the prison. And our own very dear Rabbi Fraim learned this from him over 20 years ago, where each one of the students to this day that he had got life-changing teachings from him, whether it was the different chidushim or it was his dedication to the Torah itself. May this shiur also be for his Ilui Nishmato. And where I saw in a short documentary about the Rav, that many of the students cry over the fact that just when they see the house that they used to, that was the Rabbi's house, they used to arrive there at 4 o'clock in the morning each and every single day to learn Chavruta with the Rabbi. And no matter what time they showed up, whether it was 4 o'clock or it was 3 o'clock or 3:30, the Rav was already learning, full zeal, full force, as if it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The level of commitment surely goes on to the students. And Rabbi Fraim says that when he learned this, he applied it. And he continues to apply it because this is something that's not just a hearsay. It's not just something that's a suggestion, but rather a reality. Where on Shavuot, we are all judged. We're all judged like we are on the other holidays, the other times of Am Yisrael, but similar to Rosh Hashanah, where each person is judged, both the Jews and the Gentiles. On Shavuot, the person is judged for how much Torah HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give him that year, based on his efforts, based on how much he's looking to learn Torah, as the Gemara in Masechet Brachot says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives wisdom to those that love wisdom. And now when the Chachamim ask, wait, why wouldn't he give wisdom to those that are fools? And therefore you'll have everybody wise. The Rabbi Yochanan says, no. Hashem gives wisdom to those that love wisdom, because those that love wisdom know what to do with it when they see it. Whereas those that are fools, those that do not know what wisdom is, because they're too busy chasing the videos of the celebrities, they're too busy trying to look like celebrities, they're too busy chasing all of the things of this world. Unfortunately, even if you showed the wisdom, they wouldn't know what to do with it. Hence the reason why you see today, many times people are very focused on the extraordinary cost of Jewish education for our children, while at the same time very few people advocate for the profit that you get from real Jewish education. So yes, you're right that the price of Jewish education is extraordinary. It continues to rise regardless of where you are in the world. In some places, you have to literally be a millionaire in order to get your kids the right education. In other places, even if you are a millionaire, you cannot get the Jewish education that you need, simply because, unfortunately, the community doesn't have righteous teachers. But needless to say, very few people advocate for the fact that when your child does get the right Jewish education, you become the most profitable parent on planet Earth. And of course, a person needs to know that this is not just a ethical teachings. This is not just a Musar teachings to remind us of the value of things, but even more so, this is something to remind us of the obligation that we have to educate our children, to educate ourselves, if you will. Now, of course, the Gaon Mivilna, in his Kedusha, told us how important it is to educate our children already early on in the letter. He told us that it's important to educate our daughters, to educate our sons. Surely both of them have a different type of education, and once they reach the time where they're 6 years old, they have to be separated, and you have to have, the girls learn alone, the boys learn alone. It's very important to make sure that your kids do not attend any of these co-ed schools, and needless to say, it's paramount that a parent would never send their child to a school that is considered a public school, simply because the Me'am Loez, Rav Kuli Alav Shalom, that would fast from week to week while writing the Me'am Loez and learning his Torah, says that anyone that sends their children to the public schools, and then again, he's talking about the public schools of 300 years ago, needless to say about the public schools of today, that are full of heresy, full of murder, full of rape, full of promiscuity, full of garbage upon garbage to no end. Literally, the sanitation department is cleaner than the public schools of today, and I'll prove it to you in a moment. But needless to say, Rav Kuli said that a person that sends their children to a public school, a Jew that sends their kid to a public school, is considered as if he's violating the 10 Commandments, the commandment of Avodah Zarah, the commandment of idolatry, that you're sending your kid to a place of idolatry. Now, of course, this is very critical both for Jews and Gentiles, that while Gentiles cannot send their children to Jewish schools, this does not mean that they have to send their kids to public schools that are full of impurity, full of hatred, full of murder, full of rape, full of filth upon filth, garbage upon garbage, so much garbage that it needs to be said twice in a matter of 60 seconds. I just saw a video a few days ago that somebody sent me of a young boy, must be not more than 8 years old, is being interviewed by his teacher of what he wants to do when he grows up. Now, I remember when people would ask me when I was a little boy, what do you want to do when you grow up? As it is a common question that adults always like to ask little kids what they want to do when they grow up, to see how their minds think, to see where they're heading. And of course, you have the common answers, the fireman, the policeman, the astronaut, and if you teach your kids the right way, the rabbi, the Gedol Hador, the tzaddik, the Avraham Avinu. Depends how you teach your kids. But this public school kid answered something that I didn't think I would live to see. And woe unto us that we live in a generation where we've seen it. And it's so horrible, I'm actually going to include it in this video when it's posted tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem, on a channel for everyone to see what I'm talking about, where this little boy tells the teacher, without skipping a beat, without even understanding what he's saying, that his aspirations in the world is to murder people. He wants to murder people. And it's not that he doesn't know what murder means. He knows what murder means. He wants to kill everybody except his family. And he made an exception also for the teacher that is interviewing him. He wants to murder people. He thinks that that's a good thing to do. He wants to grow up and be a murderer. And he repeats it over and over again. And over a period of 60 seconds, you hear literally Hitler himself on earth at 8 years old, 9 years old, 7 years old. Some tiny little kid is aspiring to be a murderer. Now, when I saw this, aside from being shocked and cry, there's not much that I can do other than to try to verify this. And I sent it to one of my dear students that is a public school teacher. And this is a career she's leaving anyway at the end of this semester. But nonetheless, it is a profession she was in for many years, well before Judaism became the priority in her life. And needless to say, she's actually, even if she chose to stay, wouldn't necessarily be forbidden, so long as she's teaching them the right things. But as there are some people that teach in public school that are allowed, but they're not teaching what the public school wants many times, and typically they can't survive. Either they can't survive because the curriculum is becoming so pro homosexuality, transgender, and other types of filth, or it's simply they get assaulted or raped or some other form of crime by their students or fellow teachers. And of course, we've seen all of this too. Needless to say, this teacher, when I sent her this video, she was not shocked at all. She says, yes, I have a few of those in my class too. Woe unto our ears that we lived in a day that our ears hear such things, that there are literally kids in schools that are considered top public schools. We're not talking about this is a school in the middle of the projects, crime city, we're in Compton or something like that, and even the teacher is carrying a gun. No. We're talking about schools that are in high society. Average income is over $150,000 a year. Average home is over $1 million. And you have kids telling the teachers they aspire to become like that kid they saw on TV that just shot up a bunch of people in Buffalo, just shot up a bunch of people in Texas, just shot up a bunch of people somewhere else. They want to be him. They want to be the guy that they see in the video games. Hashem Yishmo V'Yatzil. Now, of course, when you think that the two possibilities are either your kid is going to be a tzaddik, a chacham, a kadosh, a Rav Ovadia, a Rav Kanievsky, a Steipler Gaon, a Chafetz Chaim, a Chazon Ish. He's going to be a tzaddik. Maybe the world will hear of him in his Torah, maybe not, but either way, he'll be a tzaddik, he'll be a righteous person, or he'll be a murderer. You don't need to put a big questionnaire and some type of poll to figure out what percentage of parents are going to choose the tzaddik. But of course, many parents, Jewish and non-Jewish people alike, are not considering that. Hence the reason why the yeshiva system here in Western world, as well as in Israel, is constantly suffering the barrage of punishments that they're getting from the evil governments that they have locally and nationally. And the important thing that we have to have here to get as our message is, number one, whether the governments and society at large tries to destroy the education system even further or not, does not absolve us from our obligation to educate our children. Because educating our children in accordance to the Torah is a Torah obligation. It's not a suggestion, it's not a recommendation. It's a Torah obligation, no different than observing Shabbat, than eating kosher, than running away from heretics, than making fun of idolatry, than eating matzah on the first day of Pesach, fasting on Yom Kippur, and so on and so forth. It's no different of a mitzvah. And we're going to, B'ezrat Hashem, show that today. But of course, sometimes a mitzvah, although it's an obligation, although it has consequences for those that don't follow it, sometimes it's not motivating enough. People need to see stats. People need to see facts. Why is this better than what I'm doing on my own? Whether it's people simply sending their kid to whatever school is local to them, or they simply just hope that everything works out. You know, like one of those people. They just hope that things are going to work out. Rabbi, I went to that place that you told me not to go, but I hope that everything is going to work out. 3 days later, Rabbi, it didn't work out. Oh, wow, that's a big surprise. Oh, but what should I do now to fix it? Nothing. I don't know. Cry for the next 6 years to hopefully Hashem forgives you. What else do you want me to tell you? I told you not to go. I told you not to do. I told you not to eat. You did everything that I said not to do. Now you have a sin on your belt and you have no idea what a sin is because you actually took the chance that you may actually commit a sin and you ended up committing the sin. And you're thinking, oh, what should I do now? You have no idea what you've done to your neshama. You literally should be crying on the floor, hysterical, until there's no more tears in your body if you understood what the magnitude is of a single sin is. But nonetheless, none of us truly understand the magnitude of a sin. As Rabbi Fraim says, that a sin is like a star. It looks very small because you're looking at it from far. You're looking at it from far, so it doesn't look like it's a big deal. The rabbi said, don't talk to boys that are not your husband. But you decide to become friends with them because you think that you are a consultant. You think that you are doing a public service for free. You think that you are helping people with your guidance, even though he's a married man and you're a single woman. Even though he is forbidden to you and you're forbidden to him. But you decide that you're going to do what the rabbi said not to do because the Torah said not to do it. But nonetheless, people are not inspired enough by mitzvot. They're inspired by punishment. Either punishment that they hear about or the punishment that they suffer. Nonetheless, Rabbi Fraim says that's how a star is. It looks very small because it's far. But trust me when I tell you, as soon as you get close to it, you'll realize just how big it is. Such is the life of the wicked that play like they're fools or even act like fools and pretend like the star is really like the size of a quarter. The Gaon Mivilna warned us time and time again and spoke sharply at times about wasting our time, about miseducation, about doing all types of things, mentioning things such as Kafakela, a horrible, atrocious place that anyone that has ever heard the teachings of Kafakela, whether it was by ourselves or by Rabbi Fraim or by other Chachamim, to discuss Kafakela, anyone that actually knows and understands the subject literally trembles at the thought of sin, trembles. Of course, there are many that have heard about it but don't necessarily care, or perhaps they forget about it the next day, but that's only because they've made so many sins, it's hard for the purity to enter their neshama. It's called a klipa. Needless to say, the Chazon Ish is warning his own righteous family from making these sins, both the ones that are known and the ones that are unknown, the ones that are clear and the ones that are unclear. Needless to say, he's telling them that you have to make sure that you fulfill the words of the sages and chase peace. Chase peace regardless of what how difficult it is for you. Because if you truly understood the value of having peace, you'd realize that the entire Torah stands upon it. The entire Torah stands upon it. Well, many people say, well, listen, Rabbi, I'm a decent person. I don't kill anybody, so I think I'm doing okay. Even though I'm not keeping all of the mitzvot, I think I love my fellow. You know, doesn't it say in the Torah that you must love your fellow or don't do bad things to your fellow that you don't want to do unto yourself? Yes, you're right. In the name of Hillel Zaken. Hillel Zaken said that don't do unto your friend what you don't want done unto you. But your friend is also another name for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Surely HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not your friend. He's your God. He's your Father. He's your Creator. But even if someone dilutes themselves to define the word friend literally and thinks of God as a friend, this teachings of Hillel Zaken that many misappropriate and mistranslate and completely distort to the highest extent, many of them don't realize that even that is referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't do bad things to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you wouldn't have done unto yourself. What are bad things to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Im tzadakta matiten lo. Even if you were righteous, what can you possibly give to him? If you were wicked, what have you hurt him? You can't hurt him. You can't give him. What is it? How is going against Hashem? Simple. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the creator of all creation, and he created human beings in order to give us good, because he is good. And the definition of good is something that gives good. And therefore, he wants to give us good. But he has rules. He can't just give us good if we do bad. Because if he gave us good regardless of good or bad, the world will turn into Sodom and Gomorrah and Noah's flood all combined. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the Torah, that's the rules of who to give good and who not to give good, who to give bad to. So when somebody goes against the Torah, whether they are a Gentile that's serving an idol or is committing adultery or any type of crime against the Torah for the Noahites, for the Gentiles, or it's a Jew, chas v'shalom, that desecrates the Torah, desecrates Hashem's name, goes to weddings that are forbidden because there's mixed dancing, eats pork, doesn't fast on Yom Kippur, does not learn Torah every single day of his life, is not a modest woman, and so on and so forth. Those people have a very serious problem with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu simply says, I created you to give you good. You are doing all the things that I said not to do, and therefore I have to give you bad. I have to punish you in this world in order to try to get you to start doing good, so I don't have to really punish you when it comes to the eternal world. And why do I punish you in the eternal world if you already have messed up? Simple. I have to clean that neshama. I gave you a pure neshama. You dirtied it with filthy, disgusting sins, all types of homosexuality, murder, promiscuity, and filth. I have to clean it. When Rabbi Yehuda HaKadosh had a sicha, had a conversation with the celestial court of Shamayim, had a conversation with the court of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, had a conversation with them through one of the dibukim, asked several questions. And one of the questions that he asked is, since I'm doing these special tikkunim to rectify these wicked neshamot in order to fix them, does the court of heaven feel upset about me doing it, or is happy about me doing it? Because if I don't do it, these people are going to stay in Kaf Akela and Gehenom forever. But I'm doing it, and in essence elevating them and eventually taking them to Gan Eden in some cases. Is the court happy with what I'm doing, or unhappy with what I'm doing? The court responds very simply. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a pure neshama. He has no business trying to punish somebody or trying to benefit somebody, as far as there's no benefit to him. Simply all he wants is a clean neshama. What does he care if you're going to do it faster than Gehenom is going to do it, then Kaf Akela is going to do it? The court knows that somebody that dirtied their neshama has to clean it. The cleaning process is in the sixth chamber of Gehenom, in fire, in snow, in agony by Malachei Kabbalah, all the horrible things in the world that you could ever imagine, times a billion. And now, this is supposed to be a sentence for X amount of years. With your holy tikkunim, you're doing it in less time? Sure, why not? What does the court care that you're doing it? All HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants is a clean neshama. In so many words, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us is to give him back what he gave us in the same condition. But what happens when a person is already coming here for the 87th Gilgul because he's filthied his neshama many, many times? He has to fix things in this world. He can't return the same way. Needless to say, he can't add to it and more sins and continue going to places she's forbidden, continue wearing things she's forbidden, continue eating things they're forbidden, and dirty the neshama even further, because that's going to increase the punishment. That's going to make it even worse. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has no business in trying to punish people. He doesn't want to. He has to in order to get that neshama back to square one, back to the purity that he created it in. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us sages. Those holy sages simply help us save ourselves from ourselves. And the beautiful thing is here is that we have the Gaon Mivilna that many of the Chachamim consider like he is one of the sages of the Gemara that preceded him by 1,500 years. That's how much of a genius he was. When there was one time a dibuk that entered into a person, and of course scared everybody to death because strange voices are coming out of this person's throat. They're doing all types of movements with their body. Everyone was scared to death. No one was able to deal with this. And then this dibuk came near to the house of the Gaon Mivilna. The Gaon Vilna heard these screams. He continued studying his Torah. And then this Dibuk screamed out, "Oi, I'm here next to the famous Gaon that in Shamayim, they praise his name in his Torah. If he would only tell me to leave this body right now, immediately I would leave. He won't even have to do any tikkunim to get me to leave. I'm so scared of him." The Gaon Vilna peeked through the window when he heard all these screams and went back to learning Torah. When he was asked, "Kvod Harav, this neshama, this dibuk is coming in," he's saying, just talk to it and just command it to leave, and it's going to leave. Instead of all, the Kabbalists coming in, doing a whole procedure that's very extensive, very difficult, not always successful, you could just simply tell it to leave. That's how holy the Gaon Vilna was. Gaon Vilna says, no. Why? I have to learn Torah, and I don't want any shaykhut with these dibukim, this tum'ah, this impurity. Other people can do it. Even if it's more difficult, it's better they do it than me connecting myself in any way, shape, or form with this impurity. That's how extraordinary the Gaon Vilna was. And he's giving us simple day-to-day advice, kivyachol, as if simple day-to-day advice to protect ourselves from ourselves connecting to evil, from ourselves connecting to the things that are wrong, from ourselves connecting to things that are the opposite of the truth, that are the opposite of the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he tells us that we have to be very, very careful with each and every single one of these things, because Rabotai Karim, each one of these things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu forbids, it's not because he benefits or he loses from it. It's simply, you lose, I lose, everyone loses for ourselves, and simply HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to clean it in a different way, which he doesn't want to do. So in essence, the Rambam actually writes that part of the reason why he punishes us when we do bad is because we, in essence, restricted him from giving us good. He wants to give us good, and that's why he created us. When we do bad, we, in essence, restrict him from giving us what he created us to do, what he created us to get. So now, Rabotai, when a person thinks of this in a very simple manner, surely everybody thinks that they love God. Even the people that don't believe in him sometimes think that they love God. But nonetheless, a person has to ask themselves, would you want God to love you as much as you love him? If you're a smart person, you'd answer no. If you're a stupid person, you'd answer no. Why? Simple. Because if you really analyzed how much you love God, in what form you love God, you'd realize it's never enough. Not only it's never enough in regards to your obligation, it's never enough even in regards to just simple common sense. God tells you to observe Shabbat. Are you really observing Shabbat? God tells you to observe family purity. Are you really observing family purity? God tells you to pray every day. Are you really praying every day? God tells you to learn Torah every day. Are you learning Torah every day? God tells you to watch your mouth, stop saying Lashon Hara, stop looking at the wrong things, stop looking at forbidden things, stop touching forbidden things, and so on and so forth. Are you doing it? And you're going to say, yeah, I do it most of the time. Oh, okay, so you do it most of the time. You consider yourself religious. I consider myself religious. But what if God acted that way towards us, chas v'shalom? Where he would say, oh, most of the time I give you air. Just sometimes I don't give you air. Sometimes. Most of the time, I give you food. Most of the time. Just sometimes, 3 days in a row, no food. Most of the time, I give you water to drink. Sometimes, just a little bit. Sometimes, no water. When we really start analyzing, even if we're religious, even if we are doing our best, if you will, we still wouldn't want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to love us that way. Why? We want him to be committed to us 24 hours a day. Needless to say, this is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Im lo briti yomam v'layla, chukot shamayim v'aretz lo samti. If not for my covenant, if not for my Torah being studied day and night, the rules of the world will cease to exist. The rules of the world will cease to exist simply means the world would simply disappear. Rabbi Fraim Volozhin says that if there would be a second that some Jew is not learning Torah in the world, there would be no warning. The world would chas v'shalom just simply disappear. Hence the reason why he actually built a yeshiva that had a 24-hour rotation. shifts, just like you have le'avdil in corporate America and other countries of the world that are looking to chase the dollar, looking to chase the yen, looking to chase whatever currency they could possibly get their hands on, and having 24-hour shifts. 24-hour people are working so they can make more, so they can do more, so they can make more, so they can do more, and eat more, and buy more, and do more, and get more. Rabbi Fraim says we're not even looking to get more. We're looking to simply survive. We have to have people learning Torah 24 hours a day, because if we are the only people learning Torah, we literally are saving the world. We're literally saving the world. But of course, the average person cannot learn anywhere near close to that. Needless to say, if you can get the average person to learn a couple of hours a day, that's already a ma'alah. That's already a big achievement, and it's a great achievement. But nonetheless, one of the things that we are not focused on as much, aside from pushing ourselves further, aside from running away from sins, is our children. Our children. We're not as focused as our children. Why? I see parents, I talk to parents. The parents, they watch the films, they watch the Shiurim, they're avid watchers, they're doing everything that they can possibly can to get closer to Hashem. But then you have the very same parents tell you that their kid still has an iPhone and he's only 10 years old, 11 years old. They tell you that their kid watches shows on television because he likes it. They tell you that their kid still likes to play video games. What should I do? Ribono shel olam, I don't understand. If you're watching the Shiurim, why aren't you applying the same thing for your kids? Why aren't you getting your kid to do tshuva? What do you think? The kid is just going to do it on his own? Or the worst shit that I've ever heard, and I've heard this unfortunately one too many times, is when parents send their kids to yeshivot and they have the misfortune to have one of these so-called teachers that call themselves the rabbis that tell them that your kid started watching this Rabbi Reuven that's teaching him about Tikkun HaBRIT. You should convince your kid to stop watching him. We have to talk, and sometimes they'll literally have a whole intercession. They come to the house to sit down with the kid to convince him not to watch Tikkun HaBRIT. Why? He's only 12, 13, 14 years old. He's too young to learn about wasting seed. He's too young to learn about Tikkun HaBRIT. Let him learn when he's already addicted and married, like the couple that I got last week that is literally on the verge of divorce because of the addiction that the husband has. And don't think this is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 that I got just in the last week. Endless marriages are breaking because of the addiction to immorality by either the husband or the wife or both. And yet you have sometimes teachers that tell people, no, don't teach the kid this stuff. They'll fix it on their own when they're, truly addicted. Now, of course, Rabotai Kareem, a parent has to invest everything they possibly have. Everything they possibly have. Every bit of energy, every bit of money, every bit of resources to save their kids, to help their kids do tshuva before they become adults. And of course, the Gaon Vilna has discussed this time and time again. And he's telling us that this is also a commandment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is also a commandment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he continues in the letter and he says, V'af im ta'aseh achat michem shelo ke'ogen, timchalu ze leze, v'tichyu leman Hashem b'shalom. וכן לאמי ביקשתי שתדריך את בניי ובנותיי בדברים רכים שיקבלום ותשגיח עליהם. Here the Gaon Vilna seems to be steering in a different direction, but it's really not a different direction at all, and we'll see why. And he says, and even if one of you should do something improper, forgive each other and live in peace for Hashem's sake. I also ask of you, my mother, guide my children with gentle words so that they will accept them and to supervise them. So initially, he's talking about having peace, making sure there's appropriate education, make sure that you're very dedicated and loyal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says, but just in case somebody messes up, despite everybody being righteous, there's no such thing as a righteous person that doesn't sin. Even if you sin upon to each other. This one said that, this one thinks that, he is jealous of him, she's jealous of her, and so on and so forth. Even if that happens, forgive each other. Forgive each other and live in harmony, live in peace. Live in peace. Why? Because peace is very valuable. when a person has nachat, they have everything in this world. In essence, when a person has nachat, it's not just the extraordinary status that all aspire to have, whether rich or poor, young or old. Everyone is looking for this so-called happiness. But unfortunately, many people are looking for happiness with materialism. So they'll hire a coach and pay that coach $500 or $1,000 an hour to teach them how to be happy with their career, to teach them how to be happy with their marriage, to teach them how to be happy with their whatever thing that they're unhappy with. So they're paying somebody to teach them how to be happy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you can do it for free. Just learn Torah. But no, people want the hard way. They want somebody else to teach them. And many times those teachers, they themselves don't know how to be happy because they themselves are addicted to the same thing that is causing unhappiness to everybody else, all of their students, all of their so-called customers. But they tell you, listen, if you're unhappy with your job, perhaps you're not trying hard enough, and therefore you should try harder, put more into it, and you'll be happy with your job. Or maybe you should change career. Or maybe this, or maybe that. They don't realize that the root of their unhappiness is typically not because of their job. It's because of who they are. It's because of what they think of themselves. Many times the unhappiness that people have is because they're arrogant. And they think that they deserve and entitled to a lot more than what they have. They feel like if they're not the CEO, if they're not the number 2 or number 3 person in the company, hey, it's not worth it to be here. I'm not being appreciated. I'm not being respected for who I am and what I am, and literally live a delusional life. They want the position, they want the benefits of that position, but they're not willing to actually do what it takes to get that position. They simply want the coast, like the CEO seems to be, but they want the benefits of the CEO before he became CEO. So the truth is that many times when people are unhappy with their careers, it's not because of the career itself, but rather because of what they're looking for, what they're making out of their career. Did you make your career into something that is just a place to make your living so you could actually live real life, or did you make your career into life itself? If your career is life itself, surely you're going to be unhappy at some point with every career that you will have, because eventually they all become stale. Eventually you either reach the goals that you have or you don't reach the goals that you have. Either way, you'll end up being unhappy because you forgot that the journey is more important than the destination when it comes to career. Needless to say, a person that is paying somebody else, that is addicted to the same money, to the same physicality, to the same chasing its own tail type of mentality, has no idea what happiness is if it slapped them right in the face. Has no idea what happiness is if happiness showed up at their house and knocked on their door and said, "Hi, I'm Mr. Happiness." They wouldn't know what to say. They would think to give it tzedakah maybe. The reality is most people have no concept of what happiness is. And therefore, when you ask them, are you happy in your marriage? They make funny faces like, what kind of question is that? We have no idea what that means. Can you define happiness? I'm happy sometimes when he's nice to me. I'm happy sometimes when she's nice to me. I'm happy sometimes when the food is good. Everything is always connected to material. Everything is connected to something physical. And the truth is that happiness is a spiritual status. It's a spiritual status. It has nothing to do with physicality. Happiness is something that you have with or without problems. With or without problems. You wake up happy, you go to sleep happy. You are happy despite the fact that you may be dealing with problems, but you're happy because it's a spiritual status. It's something that you acquire through your connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if a person is not going to learn Torah, and even if he learns, and even if she learns, but they're not dedicating to fulfilling the Torah, they're never going to know what happiness is, because it doesn't exist in their toolbox. And the same thing goes with everything else. So now a person that has this nachat, that part of that nachat comes from that permanent state of happiness, knows what they have, knows what everybody else doesn't have. And therefore the Gaon Vilna says that it's worth it for you to forgive each other, even if the other person wronged you, just to maintain that state of happiness, that state of nachat. Maintain it. Don't ruin it. Don't let the Yetzirah enter the house and ruin everything for you, because the purpose of man is not for his own benefit, but rather to help others. That's what Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says. That's what Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says in Nefesh HaChaim. And when a person thinks, wait, my nachat that I'm either acquiring right now, I'm in the process of getting, I'm in the process of understanding what it is, or I already have it, that nachat was disturbed. Why? Because my friend, my colleague, my spouse, my kid, my neighbor, whoever, disturbed that nachat when he did XYZ. Now, that disturbance could be a temporary disturbance, and then I go back to my acquiring process of nachat, and I can just simply move on with my life, or I can make a big deal out of this thing. I can make a big deal out of her looking at me that way. I can make a big deal out of him sending me that email. I can make a big deal out of him cutting me off. I can make a big deal out of it and simply lose my mind over it. And even if I don't start breaking stuff, but in my mind, there's a war, there's a turmoil. There's literally World War 115 just this week because of he or she or they or whatever it is. Guess what? He didn't ruin your nachat. You chose to. You chose to destroy your happiness by making that disturbance more than what it should have been. Now, of course, there are people that are annoying, there are people that are mean, there are people that get a new phone number every single week and send me text messages of how much they hate me, and surely there are people that don't need to get a new phone number and tell me how much they love the shiurim. Needless to say, there are always people out there that are going to try to disturb your nachat. Don't let them. Don't let them. Simple. Don't let them. Don't let the world tell you what to do. Only let God tell you what to do. Why? He's always right. He's always right. The world, most of the time, they're wrong. Most of the time, they're wrong. And the reason why I only say most of the time is because sometimes they listen to God. Sometimes. So, Rabotai Karim, you have a situation where the Gaon Vilna insists on us living in nachat, living in peace, for Hashem's sake. And then he gives the advice that we started off with, the advice that connects all of it, and says, also I ask of you, my mother, to guide my children with gentle words so that you will accept them and to supervise them. Now, I can understand why he says, I ask you, my mother, to guide my children. Everybody that has a normal grandmother wants the safta, wants the grandmother to, be there, help with the kids. Not just because having another body in the house is good, but everybody knows the safta, the grandmother, she's good for chocolates, she's good for making the kids happy, she plays with them, the kids behave differently with her. It's different. Yeah, the mom is the mom. The mom is the greatest thing in the world, Malach Hashem. If the mom is raising the kids with Torah and mitzvot, she's a Malach Hashem. She's an angel among men. But the kids don't always necessarily see that. But if the Savta is a righteous woman, if the Savta is a decent person, a grandmother, to have her in her life is always good. It's always good. But the focus here is not on, be a Savta. No. He says, guide my children with gentle words so they will accept them and supervise them. So here he's giving us a couple of tidbits that if we're going to investigate appropriately, b'siyata dishmaya, it could change our lives forever. Not just with the chinuch of our children, but the chinuch of ourselves. Now, of course, everyone likes the teachings that Torah should come with calmness, but yet you have some of the greatest teachers in history, whether it's Rav Shvadron, or Rav Avigdor Miller, or Rav Ovadia, or many of the other greats, Rav Nisim Yagen, and many other great sages. When they taught Torah, they were very passionate. Sometimes they would say certain things with certain voice that in itself was scary. Sometimes they would say the things in a calm voice, but the words were scary. Anyone that had the merit to hear the holy voice, mamash, the holy voice of the Ben Ish Chai. There's a recording from 120 years ago that we heard of the Ben Ish Chai. the holy voice, literally, if your neshama is tuned the right way, you start crying just from hearing his voice. If anyone heard the voice of Rabbi Yashiv when he was learning Torah, the tune that he would sing when he would learn Torah, if your neshama is tuned the right way, you start crying hysterically. Not from sadness. Perhaps sadness that we don't have him in the world anymore, and that's also possible. But literally, it's just unbelievable. You feel like you're inside the Bet HaMikdash. You're hearing the Leviim's holy voice singing inside the Bet HaMikdash. After the whole thing is done, you realize, oh, that was just BezratHashem.org on a YouTube channel. Whoa, forgot I was there. You don't realize where you were. You're in a different world because you heard the voice of the holy tzaddik. Anyone heard the voice of the Klosenberger Rebbe pray, cry hysterically on a typical prayer on a mincha on a Tuesday afternoon? If your neshama is tuned the right way, you literally start crying. You literally start crying. It's unbelievable. Rabotai, if anyone didn't hear, but simply read the words that the very same Ben Ishchai wrote, the very same Rabbi Yehuda Ftaya wrote, and all of these tzaddikim, when it came to punishment, when it came to going against Hashem, you'd see they use the same tone, the same voice. Only this time it says, yes, my dear daughter, go, Hashem loves you, you will do well, but in case you don't go in accordance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, surely you're going to go to Gehenom and suffer severely. Same voice, same tune. And it's like an angel, it's like singing you a lullaby. Go to sleep, it's gonna be hell on earth if you... What? Unbelievable. That's what they mean by nachat. Meaning, Rabotai Karim, it's not nachat that you're just going to say everything in pleasantness and gentle words as if you're not going to tell people the truth. No, simple. Whether you are a passionate person or you are a person that has more of a monotone voice, or you have whatever tools that Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you, give those words out of that pure heart of yours. Don't give them out of your ego. Don't give them out of your logic and trying to be a charismatic speaker. Don't give them as a result of trying to impress them or scare them. No, simply tell them what's in that heart that belongs to them. That life of theirs that's in your heart, tell them about it. Tell them about it. Sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you a sweet, angelic voice like the Ben Ishchai. Sometimes he's going to give you a sweet, beautiful voice like a Rav Ze'ev. Sometimes he's going to give you that voice that's literally full of suffering like a Rav Mazuz or a Rav Nisim Yagen. He's going to give you different voices. Sometimes he's going to give you the voice of a Rav Shvadron when he was crying for Am Yisrael not learning enough Torah. On another hand, sometimes he'll give you Rav Shvadron's voice when he was the Baal Koreh on Rosh Hashanah. The key is to know it's not yelling, not yelling. That's not what the gentleness is. The gentleness is bring it from your heart. Tell them the truth. Don't lie to them, appease them because you're scared of them instead of being scared of God. And of course, Rabotai, when we're talking to our kids, don't go and start bashing your kid because you had a bad day at work. It's not his fault, all 8, 9, 10 years of him, that you had a bad day at work. Don't start lashing out at your daughter because you feel fat. It's not her fault you're fat. You decided to have a kid. You decided to eat. You decided to live. You decided to breathe. It's not her fault. Don't blame her that you had a fight with your husband. Don't blame them for acting like kids that want to play even though you want to go to sleep. Don't blame them for those things. They're simply being kids. Now, that's of course easier said than done. The key is to know that there is times where we need to be serious, tell the kids what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, what's allowed, what's not allowed. There are times you need to show that you're mad, even though in essence you're not, because it's for the sake of chinuch. But the key is to always remember, just like you're supposed to give rebuke to adults, you have to do it with kids. It has to come from your heart. It has to be because you care about them, not because you want to show you're right. And many times you will find it that people like to state what they want to say, not because they actually care about the other party's well-being, but rather because they want to show that they know more than the other party. Oh, you're stupid, you're driving on Shabbat. Yes, you're right. The assessment is correct according to the Torah. They're driving on Shabbat. That's pure stupidity because it's going to lead to Gehinom. Yes, but saying it that way is not going to make him smarter. Saying it that way is not going to make him smarter. Not in that format, not a one-on-one, not in a such a serious fashion. Perhaps try a different strategy. What do you mean a different strategy? Well, the strategy should be, first think before you talk, do you care about them? If the answer is no, go do tshuva yourself. Second question, do you care that they are God's son or daughter? If the answer is no, go back and you do tshuva. You do tshuva. 3, do you know that they don't know how dumb what they're doing is, and therefore don't know or don't believe the magnitude of the consequence of their actions? No. Go back and do tshuva. When a person starts analyzing every single step, not just the words, not who is being said to, but rather, why am I saying it? Not just why am I saying it. Why am I saying it to him? Why am I saying it to her? Do I care about them no different than I care about my own son, my own daughter, my own wife, my own husband? Or I just want to show people I know more. Why do I do it? And that's the beauty here. When you apply that same logic to your own son or daughter, and you think, wait a minute, do I care? Sure, that's my kid. Okay, if it's your kid, so surely you care. Why are you acting towards them like they're an enemy? Why are you acting towards them like they work for the opposing army? When one parent brought his son to pray at the minyan of the Chazon Ish, he had a minyan in his house. The kid was a little kid, and he's being a kid, and he started all those things that kids do. Surely the parent was embarrassed. This is not just a minyan, this is the minyan of the Gedol Hador. And apparently after the kid didn't listen to the silent message, the message got slightly louder when he got slapped. And after that, the kid stopped. After the prayer was finished, the Chazon Ish came up to this father and said, you just disciplined your kid. The parent said, yeah, he's causing trouble. I don't want to be an embarrassment, Chilul Hashem. Chazon Ish says, you know what you disciplined them to do or to think? You disciplined them to think that anger is okay, and so is hitting. That's what you disciplined them to do. How would you have to deal with it? Different. What's different? Perhaps walk outside, talk to him outside, calm him down. If you see he can't calm down, take him somewhere else, go to a different minyan. Meaning you have to work on yourself before you start lashing out and blaming all of your problems on your kids. And again, all of this is easier said than done. When you're tired from work and you're under stress because of money, you and your spouse are not really getting along, you're not on the same page. She wants to go to A, you want to go to B, you are both on different pages, and then the kid comes up, hi, and you're not exactly in the mood for the hi. So you have to do tshuva on a regular basis. And one of the greatest gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us is children. But not just because they're beautiful and they're cute and they're amazing and they could be the greatest addition to your life, but also because they're one of the greatest tools that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you in order to help you do tshuva. Because that kid is like a little sponge, and he's going to remember everything. And she's going to remember everything. Not forever, but for short term, they remember everything they hear like little copy machines. And they'll hear in a shiur by the rabbi someone that expresses their anger by throwing something, by ripping something. It's like an idol worshiper. And then they come home with you on the way from the Knesset. You heard the shiur together, and you're trying to give your kid Musa on the way home. Oh, listen, we heard the rabbi, we have to be more serious with learning Torah. You know, we have to be more serious with mitzvot. We have to put you on tzitzit all the time. All the kid can think of, why is this idol worshiper telling me to put on my tzitzit? Shouldn't he be worried about the fact that he's an idol worshiper? Why is this idol worshiper telling me that I should work on myself? Doesn't he realize the rabbi just said that he has no share of the world to come? That's the only thing the kid can hear. Parents come to me and they say, listen, Rabbi, my kid is thinking, he has problems. I don't understand what's happening. All of a sudden he's thinking of Christianity. All of a sudden he's thinking about things that are against the Torah. Typically, I just ask questions before I give answers. Why? To identify the real problem. Because I know it's not the kid. They're saying the problem is the kid wants to go to Christianity, or the kid wants to go to some girl or boy or whatever it is. This is the root of the problem. Root of the problem 9 out of 10 times is the parent. So I ask the parent, wait, hold on a second. The kid wants to, what? Sports? Where do you watch sports? Oh, he watches on YouTube. Oh. What, the kid wants to go to Christianity? How does he know about Christianity? He lives in Bnei Brak. He lives in Yerushalayim. He lives in a religious neighborhood in New York. How does he know about Christianity? He's 12 years old. Oh, internet. Oh. And you think the kid's the problem? You gave the kid the key to Gehenom, and you are surprised he got fire. He's on fire. Oh, today. Okay, today. You want to be today? Then you got today. A person needs to understand that in order for them to be a good parent, it starts with what's in here first. Then what comes out of here second. And not necessarily what these things do. Now, of course, a person that is listening to these shiurim, perhaps they see some of these things in themselves, and they shouldn't feel bad about it. This is all of us. This applies to every person on earth. Even if they're already good at it, this is the type of stuff that needs constant chizuk. And if they're not, surely this is tools to remind us what we need to do. But needless to say, it's something that you should not only listen to, but listen to with your kids, along with the rest of the shiurim. Because if you have your children listening to the truth, listening to the Torah, learning it, applying it, and not only learning it on their own in yeshiva or in a seminary, but learning it together, learning it as a family. Everybody's neshamot connect. Everybody's neshamot rise together. Everybody gets on the same page. The next time you rebuke, because you heard something in a shiur, that kid's going to understand why. Because he also heard it. She also heard it. But if you focus a lot more efforts on which restaurant you're going to go to dinner to on Tuesday with your girlfriends, And then all of a sudden your daughter comes out of her room with some outfit that only in Gehenom they're allowed to wear there, because over there they burn you, so it doesn't make a difference what you wear. It's your fault, not our fault. Why? Instead of focusing on hanging out with your girlfriends on Thursday and deciding whether you're going to have steak or you're going to have a mushroom soup, you should be focusing on getting your daughter to where she needs to be. Now again, everybody wants to live their life. Question is, how much are you willing to pay for that? Life, that freedom that you have. If you're willing to pay your kids, then I'm telling you, you're going to suffer a lot more than you can imagine. Because a person that does not invest into their children ultimately suffers from their children. And if it's not suffering from their children, they will certainly suffer from their grandchildren. And of course, there are parents that raise their kids with the traditions. And they said, listen, we're not fire and brimstone, we're not going to tell you what to do, you're going to grow up, you're going to do what you want to do, but stay connected, come to shul, come keep, come this, come that, do all these different things. But there wasn't much heart behind it. There wasn't much heart behind their Yiddishkeit. There wasn't much zeal behind their Avodat Hashem. The kid surely didn't have it either. And what ends up happening is one day they cry, they call the rabbi and say, oh, rabbi, you have to help my kid. He's about to marry a non-Jew, Hashem Yishmo. She's about to marry a non-Jew, Hashem Yishmo. And the worst of it all is when you hear people that consider themselves religious, but they tell you that they're perfectly okay with the fact that their daughter or their son has a girlfriend or a boyfriend. They don't think there's anything wrong with it because we're in new times. And then they get surprised that a lot of suffering comes as a result of this. So the Holy Torah is commanding us to educate our kids with Torah. Not just with science, not just with profession, but with Torah and Torah values. And better yet, the Gaon Mivilna elaborates on the point in telling us that yes, while you have to teach these things purely out of the love that you have for whoever you're teaching, I ask you, my mother, that you supervise them. Why supervise? If she's already there, she's already teaching them, guiding them, why the additional supervision? Years ago, I heard a shiur from Rav Yosef Mizrahi Sheikhye, and he says everything in the holy language has a opposite, except certain exceptions. Everyone understands tall, the opposite is short. Fat, the opposite is skinny. Dark, opposite is light, and so on and so forth. But what's the opposite of fear of heaven? Yirat Shamayim. There is no such thing in the holy language as no Yirat Shamayim. But rather we learn from the Torah in the book of Exodus that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent the plague of Barad, of the hail, those Egyptians that feared Hashem went inside with their animals, like Moshe Rabbeinu warned them, and therefore they listened, because they had fear of Hashem. But those that lo samu lev, did not pay attention, stayed outside and died. When we supervise, it's not a matter of supervising them because we want to scare them, but rather we're supervising them in order to see what kind of fear of the Almighty do they have. Where do they stand? Because if they have fear of the Almighty, they're on the right path and they're only going to grow. If they don't, then we know exactly what we need to work on when it comes to spirituality. Now, the whole concept of teaching begins with knowing the truth yourself, knowing what Hashem said, and living it. Because unlike adults that are willing to forgive other people's hypocrisy because they know that they themselves are hypocrites, children, generally speaking, don't appreciate hypocrisy. They call things as they are. They have a lie odometer that, or hypocrisy odometer, that perhaps is very sharp and may it always stay that way. So if they see that their parents are full of it, if they think their parents are saying one thing and doing another, that in itself is going to encourage them to do the exact opposite of what their parents are doing. So the first thing in child education is to educate ourselves. The second thing is to know that this is an obligation, not a recommendation for a good life or a recommendation in order for you to have happiness, but rather an obligation as part of your servitude of Hashem. And this week's Parashat Bamidbar, says, Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe Bamidbar Sinai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu in the desert of Sinai. Why the desert of Sinai? Simple. There are many things that are going to be distracting you in life. Friends, family, work, health, and the list goes on. When it comes to your servitude of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which now we know includes your education of your kids, act as if you are in a desert. Do not let the negativity of the outside impact how you educate your kids, how you love your kids, how you put time into your kids. Don't let your money troubles cause you to disregard your kids or abuse your kids, chas v'shalom. Don't let your craziness and all types of addictions to things cause your kids to suffer. You have to understand that when it comes to serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to serve us as if we are alone in the desert. And when a person is alone on the desert, it's not just that you're alone, but rather you are constantly in danger because you are alone. You're constantly in danger because you are alone. You're in danger because anyone that comes, any of the bandits that come, you can't defend yourself. That bandit may be a next door neighbor. That bandit may be a classmate. That bandit may be whoever it is. So you're vulnerable. On a second token, you have to be focused as if none of this stuff is going to distract you from what you need to do. You're in a desert. And last but not least, a person needs to know when they are in the desert, they can always turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Always turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because He's always with us. Especially when we act as if we are alone with Him. Now, in Parashat Vayetchanan, it's one of the places we have the commandment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to teach our children. But not just our children, Rabotai. In chapter 4, verse number 9, it says, רק ישמר לך ושמור נפשך מאוד, פן תשכח את הדברים אשר ראו עיניך, ופן יסורו מלבביך כל ימי חייך, והודעתם לבניך ולבני בניך. Translation, only beware for yourself, and greatly beware for your soul, lest you forget the things that your eyes have beheld, and lest you remove them from your heart all the days of your life, and make them known to your children and your children's children. Here we have a clear verse from the Torah that commands us to teach not just ourselves, to maintain and beware not to ruin not just our soul, but also the soul of our children and our children's children, meaning our grandkids. Now, most people read this and say, oh, okay, so I have to send my boy to yeshiva, I have to send my girl to a seminary, and Bezat Hashem, they have kids, I have to make sure that those kids will have a good education too. And if that's what you understood, that's very nice, but it's incomplete. Now, when the idolaters from Christianity read this, I have no idea what they're thinking, because this in essence tells you that you're forbidden from learning anything that they're teaching, because it's all idolatry, it's all foreign, it's all not Torah. The average Christian has no concept whatsoever of what the Torah says, because they call it the Old Testament. They call it like as if it's something that's not relevant anymore, chas v'shalom. But needless to say, when we look at this pasuk, we're not looking to read it just literally and understand what it says just literally, because we know that that very same Torah that we're supposed to teach our kids and our children's children is the Torah that we ourselves have to learn, as the pasuk began with, that you have to protect your soul, you have to learn all of these things, apply all of these things to yourself, and then also to your children and your children's children. And part of that learning, Rabotai Karim, is to know that the verses in the Torah have a lot more to them than appears. When we look at this verse, we can first see the obvious. There's an halacha, an obligation, that we have to teach ourselves, we have to teach our children's children. But the Chachamim extrapolate more from it. Rambam, Ilchot Talmud Torah, chapter 1, halacha number 2. Just as a person is obligated to teach his son, so too he is obligated to teach his grandson, as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 9. This is the verse the Rambam brings. Furthermore, this charge is not confined to one's children and grandchildren alone. Rather, it is a mitzvah for each and every chacham to teach all students, even though they're not his children. As the Dvarim, chapter 6, verse 7, as this continues, states, and you shall teach them to your sons. And the oral Torah, which the Sifri says, this is referring to Moshe Sinai, halacha Moshe Sinai. It's unique types of halachot that we got from Moshe Rabbeinu. That says, your sons is not just your sons, but your sons here is referring to also your students. For students are called your sons. And where do they get that? Many places. And one of the sources that the Rambam brings is Kings 2, chapter 2, verse 3, where Elisha the prophet says, and the sons of the prophet, when it talks about Elisha the prophet, it says, and the sons of the prophet went forth. All the young kids, all the students of Elisha saw him, and they went forth, they went towards him. The Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 68a, says that Rabbi Akiva used to refer to his rabbi, Rabbi Eliezer ben Holkenos, as Avi Avi, my father, my father. The same as Elisha Navi referred to Eliyahu Navi, his rabbi, my father, my father. Showing proofs from both sides that when it's referring to students, when it's referring to children, it's referring to students, not just the biological. So then the Rambam asks, well, if so, why did the commandment explicitly mention one son and grandson? Why doesn't it say, okay, it's one son, one grandson, and one students? Or just say, just students, which regardless, it's sons, it's everything. Simple. To grant precedence to one's son over one's grandson, and one's grandson over the son of a colleague. So here the Rambam extrapolates the halacha from the literal verse and shows us how there's a whole lot more to learning Torah than just reading the verses. For all of the fools that think that they can learn Torah by simply reading it literally, like people read Harry Potter or they read the new False Testament, this is not the way to learn Torah. To learn Torah, you have to know that everything has to be extrapolated and in such a fashion where there is endless amount of messages from each and every single verse, each and every single word, each and every single letter, and each and every single nikud, and even each and every single ketel, which is the crown on top of the letters. That's how much Torah there is. So here we see that a person has an obligation. Number one, teach themselves. 2, teach their children. 3, their grandchildren. 4, also others. Also others. Now, the next halakha, the Rambam says, in halakha number 3 in chapter 1, that also one is obligated to hire a teacher for one's son, while one is not required to undertake any expense to teach the colleague's son. So while you're obligated to teach your son, teach your grandson, and if you are a chacham, teach others, you have to spend money, however much it costs, to make sure that your son gets a Jewish education. The last thing a person should ever complain about is that the education of Torah is costing him money. Because if he realizes that this is an obligation that is saving him from an endless amount of pain in this world and the next, he'll realize this is not a cost, but rather an investment. Now, teaching others, on the other hand, he doesn't have to spend money on that. He can as midat chasidut, but he doesn't have to. Now, a person who is not instructed by his father is obligated to arrange for his own instructions. When he can understand the verse that says, "And you shall study them and take heed to perform them." You understand that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, study Torah and follow it, that means that you have enough IQ to become religious even if you grew up anti-Torah. You grew up in a household where your parents hated the Torah. So long as you understand the meaning of listen to God and follow what He says, you have no excuses. And last but not least, he says, in every case, in every place, one finds the study takes precedence over deed. For study brings about deed, however, deed does not bring about study. So he says that you can't just say that you can do all the good things without learning Torah. Doesn't work that way. If you don't learn Torah, you're not going to know what's good and what's bad. And further, the more you learn Torah, the more you're going to be enticed to follow the Torah. Whereas if you simply define good according to your own logic, it's not going to bring you into the mode of actually learning. And needless to say, into determining what's right and wrong and according to God. Now, when a person says, okay, sees this, okay, fine, I understand that it's good to learn, it's good to teach, but teaching others? The Gemara Masechet Kiddushin, page 30a, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, says that whoever teaches his grandson Torah, it's as if you are at Mount Sinai. Person wants the spiritual elevation as if they're at Mount Sinai. Make sure you teach yourself, your son, your grandson Torah. Further, the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin says someone that teaches his fellow son, not your son, not your grandson, but somebody else's son, Torah, it's as if you gave him birth. and became partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, on the other hand, Masechet Tmura, page 16a, says something a little scary, bringing the source from Mishlei, from Shlomo HaMelech, chapter 29, verse 13, which says, for those of you that are teaching Torah, have the ability to teach Torah, have one or more Talmidim in your yeshiva, in your local shul, or wherever you're teaching, you should know that although you're praiseworthy, if you're doing the right thing, you're teaching the right thing, you also have to remember that there is also a price for that reward that you're going to get. What's the price? That the commitment is never ending. So much so that the Gemara in Masechet Tmura says that the moment that a Talmid comes to his Rav to learn Torah from him, if the Rav accepts the Talmid's offer to learn, and he teaches him, Hashem will give him more wisdom. The greatest reward you could ever give someone that learns Torah is more wisdom, to learn more Torah, more Torah. That's the greatest thing. Someone that toils over Torah, if you give him more Torah, that's greater than any amount of money, any material thing in the world. David HaMelech says, Mikol melamdai iskalti. I learned from everywhere. I learned from everybody, from all the students, from all the naysayers, my enemies. I learned Torah wherever I can. I learned Torah from everywhere. That's how much David HaMelech loved Torah. Matov li toratecha kol yayom isichati. David HaMelech says, your Torah is so good, all day it's my conversation, that's all I talk about. So when you say to David, if you go and teach your student that has to be taught, Hashem is going to give you even more wisdom. Great. It's the greatest thing in the world. The Gemara says that, I think it was Rav Huna, who was a Kohen, that had 2 legs of a cow in his hand. And he came and he says, whoever can give me, he came to the Bet Midrash with these 2 giant pieces of meat, cost a lot of money. He says, whoever can give me a chidush, I'll give him one of these. One of the Chachamim, young man, gave him a chidush. Hafuna says, oh, wow, what a beautiful chidush. Here you go. He says, where'd you hear this chidush? He said, I heard it from your rabbi. Hafuna almost passed out. He goes, had I known that you heard it from my rabbi, I would have given you both of them. That's how much he appreciated Torah. One time, guy was learning Torah, and he was stuck in the Gemara. Gemara, looking at it, trying to figure something out. Couldn't figure it out. Look, past this, that, didn't work out. Who are you going to ask? If you're in a Bet Midrash, there's other Chachamim there. If you're not in a Bet Midrash, you're at home. Or you're in Bet Midrash by yourself. So he thought, you know what? My son, I'm going to ask him. Hey, come over here a second. What do you think of this? And he tells him the whole Gemara. To his surprise, this little boy, 4, 5, 6 years old, tiny, gives him the Torah, gives him the answer. Mamash like a Kadosh Baruch Hu put the answer in the little kid's mouth. Like it says that we no longer have prophecy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave prophecy to the little kids and to the people that are crazy. Mamash like HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the answer in this little kid's mouth. This guy, this father, literally almost passed out. Couldn't believe it. Question is, why did this father get it? And why did another father not get it? They're both religious. They both learn. They both love Torah. Difference. Chinuch. One father is focused on the chinuch of his kid to make sure the rabbis are going to teach you, the rabbis are going to teach you, the rabbis are going to teach you, be a good boy. That's good. The other father is, the rabbis are going to teach you and Abba's going to teach you. But in order for Abba to teach you, Abba has to learn also. So since Abba's learning and Abba's growing, there is no ego. He knows, she knows. Just like you're learning, I'm learning, you're a Talmid, I'm a Talmid. And there's one Talmid to another. I'm asking you a question. Maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't know the answer. In so many words, the thought of asking a little boy, if he knows the answer to a Gemara that only big grown-ups barely know, will never cross the mind of the average person that think, no, he surely doesn't know because he's little. Logically, you're right. But not always. And the face on that little boy is changed forever after that. Because he knows, I have a share in the Torah. I have a share in the Torah. He's not thinking, I'm 5 years old, I'm 6 years old, I'm 4 years old, and one day I'll learn Torah. Like the rabbi. No. Now I have a share in the Torah. Why? I was asked the question. But how is the boy ever going to ask a question, answer a question, or ask a question if the father himself is too focused on his computer for work, too focused on his computer for sports, too focused on his phone, text messaging his friends if they want to go out for a beer? How is the father ever going to have time to learn in order to be a father? So the key is to understand, Rabotai, is that this is an obligation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded on us for our own good, for our own benefit. And surely, when a person follows the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his sages, he only wins. She only wins. Now, Rabban Gamliel, the Gemara says in Masechet Sukkah that 1 year he spent 1,000 zuz on a lulav. What's 1,000 zuz? If you go and look at your ketubah, you'll see that your ketubah says 200 zuz on it. It means that Rabban Gamliel spent 5 times the cost of marriage on his lulav for Sukkot, that you can't even use for a full week because you have Shabbat, and you can't use your lulav in a trog on Shabbat. It's muktzeh. So for 6 days, he spent 1,000 zuz, ton of money. Chachamim say, okay, we know he was rich, comes from the lineage of David HaMelech, he was the Nasi. What do we learn that he spent so much money on the lulav? To educate us, his children, how much he loved the mitzvot. When a father or a mother loves the mitzvot, you see it on the kids. When a mother and a father feels the mitzvot are a burden, you also see it on the kids. If the kids are already talking about Shabbos is coming up, but it's only Tuesday, I already know everything I need to know about their parents' attitude towards Torah, mitzvot, and holidays, which of course include Shabbat. Why? If the kid is looking forward for Shabbos on Tuesday, that means that Shabbos is part of the whole week. Shabbos is the only reason the week exists. Shabbat. That kid can't wait for Shabbat. He's not looking for Wednesday. He's not looking forward for Monday or Sunday, the day off from school. No, he's looking forward for Shabbat all week. Why? Because that's the chinuch that he got from his Ima and Abba. But if the kid says, what, Shabbat's coming in now? Forgot it was even Friday. That already tells you, more times than not, what the parents' focus was on throughout that week, and maybe throughout their lives. It wasn't on Shabbat. Their focus was on other things. And surely, the world is full of things to distract us. Work, money, co-workers, boss, employees, customers, marriage, this, school, tuition, bills, electric, flat tire, 1.5 million different things are in a desert. But remember, you're in a desert. Remember, you're in a desert. You have to remember, if your attitude towards mitzvot is with excitement, with zeal, I can't wait for Shavuot, I can't wait for Pesach, I can't wait for this. Yeah, but Ima, it's 1.5 months away. Exactly, I can't wait. I can't wait for this week's parasha. Yeah, but it's Motzei Shabbat. Ima, you're already worried about next week's parasha? Yeah. We have to already learn it now. We have to go do it now. Why? We have to get ready. When a parent is excited about the Torah and the mitzvot, that is greater education than that child could ever get at any yeshiva in the world. But when a parent is lackadaisical when it comes to Torah and mitzvot, disregards them, views them as a burden, worse yet, views it as a bill. He thinks that he's fulfilling the obligation of chinuch by simply writing a check every month. Wrong. Plenty of rich people paid full tuition for their children just to end up being criminals, both in the Jewish world and non-Jewish world. Plenty of rich people have to deal with the fact that they viewed the education of their kids as a bill, only to find out that their kid turned into a criminal that the next time they'll see him is probably going to be on the news. The reality is, Rabotai, is when we ourselves do tshuva and we start viewing the Torah as this is my lifeline, this is my family's lifeline, this is my marriage, this is my parenting, this is my education, this is my family's education, this is heaven, and what this is, without this, it's only hell. Without the Torah, it's only hell on earth and hell after earth. When a person understands that without Torah, it's literally only hell on earth and thereafter, they start getting excited for Torah, for mitzvot, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're not waiting for disaster to strike, chas v'shalom, for them to pray to Hashem. They're not waiting for some type of tragedy to happen in the community for them to read Tehillim. They're not waiting for any type of issue to come up for them to motivate themselves to do a little more. They're chasing mitzvot. They're chasing mitzvot, Rabotai. A parent has to know that every kid is born cute, especially to their parents. But in your prayer, you say Psalm 92, Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. David HaMelech says, you know that kid of yours He was cute when he was born. He's going to grow up one day. He's either going to be righteous or he's going to be wicked. He's either going to be like Hitler or he's going to be like Moshe Rabbeinu. All depends on you. This Mizmor Shabbat, if you read it literally, you have no idea what's right and what's left. As far as the deeper meaning of the verses. And David HaMelech says, Befroach reshaim kemo esev, v'yatzitzu kol pa'alei avin. When the wicked sprout like a grass and flourish all the doers of sin. It says there's a lot of reshaim out there, like grass. And later on it says, Tzadik katamar yifrach, kerez kelevalon yizgeh, shetulim bebet Adonai, bechatzerot Eloheinu yafrichu, od yenevun beseva, deshanim ranim yiyu. Says the righteous man flourishes like a date palm, like a cedar tree in Lebanon. He will grow tall, planted in the house of Hashem, in the courtyards of our God. They will flourish. Still, they'll be fruitful in old age, vigorous and fresh they will be. So quite a different description, where you have many, many wicked, few righteous. That's the literal translation. And if we read that way, we wouldn't be very different than some of the idolaters in the world that also read Tehillim. But Am Yisrael HaKadosh doesn't read Tehillim that way. Am Yisrael HaKadosh reads it deeper. Am Yisrael asks questions. Surely we know that there are more wicked than there are righteous. And therefore, it says wicked in plural and righteous in singular. But how come when David HaMelech says the wicked, he compares them to grass, and yet the righteous is like a tree? Rav Meir Eliyahu Shichyeh said, in the name of the Chachamim, the wicked, they're like grass. There are countless of them. Many, many of them. And when a teacher once wanted to teach his student some musar because his student was complaining about the fact that all the other kids in the school are bad, and all the other kids in the neighborhood are bad, and all the neighbors themselves are bad, and all of these other people are bad, and they look like they're having a fine life, and we're struggling here just to serve Hashem. We have money issues, and this issue, and that issue, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Don't question it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what he's doing. Those wicked that you keep pointing your finger on, they're like grass. It's not a chidush that there are many wicked out there. They're like grass. But show me the roots of that grass. In fact, by looking at that piece of grass, tell me how much more of that grass is in the ground. Of course, anyone goes to their yard, plucks out a little blade of grass, and sees there's nothing under the ground. There's virtually nothing under the ground. In fact, what you see, that's all you get. And it was quite easy to pluck it out. You needed 2 fingers, and you could pluck out anything very easily. Those are the wicked. They're here today, gone tomorrow, will be replaced by others until Mashiach comes. But don't think for a moment that they have roots, that they're going to be here forever, that they have staying power. Don't think that there's supposed to be only a few of them, because that's this world that's going to have many of them. That's not going to be a valid excuse when you go up to Shamayim that there was many wicked. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world in such a fashion that there will be wicked in every generation. The Gemara in Masechet Chagigah says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world 974 generations after he wrote the Torah. And the reason why it was 974 generations was because That's how many wicked people were supposed to be in the world before we got the Torah, and the world wouldn't be able to exist. So instead of putting them over in the world for 974 generations before we got the Torah, instead, he gave the Torah 26 generations after he created the world, and those 974 generations of wicked people, he sprinkled them throughout all of the generations. Thereby, by default, there will always be wicked people. But you are still expected to be a tzaddik. And know this, says David HaMelech. That tzaddik, that's a tree. But not just any tree. That's a palm tree. That's a cedar. That's a strong tree. That's a tree that doesn't move. That's a tree that grows taller and taller by the day. The older it is, the greater it is. The more Torah he has, the greater he becomes. And if you think for a moment that these wicked grass could do anything to it, just look at the roots of that tree. The roots of that tree are nearly 50 or 40% of the size of the tree that you see above ground. When you look at the tree, you think, oh, this is pretty tall. Look at the roots, and then you'll be impressed. He didn't become this tall. He didn't become this strong. He didn't become this spiritually beautiful just by appearing like everybody else. No, the ones that appeared like everybody else, that's the grass. And there are countless of them. The one that became the tree, first and foremost, he worked on the roots. He worked on his foundation. He worked on himself. He worked on his household. He worked on his children. He worked on what needs to be the base. He didn't concentrate on one day I'll have fruits, and one day I'll be the tallest, and one day I'll be a rabbi. No. He worked on the foundation. And once that happened, the rest of it is history. Many people lose steam in their journey to success because they focus too much on the prize. If that's in business or that's in childbearing. If you focus on your servitude of Hashem in such a fashion, surely you'll be like the grass. And woe unto us, to a generation full of more grass than we already have. But if we focus on that foundation that makes the journey the priority, that foundation that ensures that we are doing our part, success is inevitable. And that tree will grow out of that. When a person focuses on what they need to do, not what the world needs to do, what they need to help, what they need to serve, what they need to learn, what they need to do, their foundation, that, Rabotai, ends up becoming a cedar tree, a palm tree, something significant, whether in business or life itself. Don't look at your ambition to become a millionaire as a valid reason of choosing a career. Because whether you realize it or not, whatever career you choose ultimately will just become work. Don't make it any more than what it needs to be. If Hashem wants you to succeed monetarily, He doesn't need you to choose any particular career. There are plenty of people that are in very, very successful careers, but they're waiting tables on the side. Successful careers because those careers typically pay big money. But Hashem chose not to give it to them. And there are many people that are in careers that no one's ever heard of. They clean sewers. They walk dogs. They make dog food. They make Q-tips. They make markers. They have nursing homes. They make the beds for nursing homes. They are in the business of metal. And Hashem decides to give those people millions and millions of dollars. Is their business better than the other? Not necessarily. Simply, Hashem decided to give one versus the other. Don't make your career choice based on the end result that you want. Make it based on the journey. Is this job going to consume my life or just be something that I do in my life? The same goes, Rabotai, when it comes to your servitude of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which includes your marriage, includes your learning, includes your teaching, includes your children, includes everything. Don't be focused on one day I want to be a rabbi. Don't be focused on one day my kid is going to be the biggest rabbi. Don't be focused on one day we're going to be the smartest in the world. No. If you do that, more times than not, you're bound to fail. Why? Because sometimes those aspirations simply not for you. At least not in the timing that you want it to be, or at all. Some people are destined to be, and some people are not. We don't serve Hashem because we are going to be the best in the world. We serve Hashem because we're going to be the best that we can be. Rabbi Zusha Minapoli says, I'm not scared that they're going to ask me in heaven, why wasn't I Moshe Rabbeinu, and why wasn't I Rabbi Akiva? I'm scared that they're going to ask me in Shamayim, why wasn't I Zusha, the best version of Zusha that I can be? When we look at the fact that the journey is what we need to focus on. Every day, you learn a little bit. Every day, you apply a little bit. Every day, you teach a little bit. You teach yourself. You teach your spouse. You teach your children. And if you have the ability and you have the know-how, you teach others' children. Your children's children, your neighbor's children, your community's children. And surely HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you more and more wisdom. But don't focus on becoming famous, and don't focus on the prize. Because truth be told, once you know what you're doing and you're on that path, you already realize you're living in heaven. Despite all the difficulties, despite all the troubles and all the tribulations, you know that if you had to pick between what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you on your current path versus the path of the rest of the world, you might as well just say you got heaven. Because their path, Hashem Yishmo, it's the path of the grass that has no foundation, no roots, easily falls off, and never ever remembered. B'ezrat Hashem, this too will give each and every single one of us enough courage to do the will of Hashem, despite the difficulties that we find in the desert. Because it's the journey that counts. And if we ourselves do tshuva the right way, that means that we're going to be bringing our kids with us. That means that we're not going to complain about good education. We're going to do everything we can to get the best education for ourselves, for our family, and even for our community. Because we're all sons of one man. Bnei ish echad nachnu. We're all sons of one man. And we're all looking to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.